So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Business as Usual. I'm always happy to be here. I know it's a rainy day in Pittsburgh, but it's a beautiful day when we get a chance to talk to amazing people who are building the future of Pittsburgh. And today is no exception. So a couple of things before we get started and I introduce our guest. I just want to remind everyone that we have a chat and you will be on mute. So the chat will be, we ask you not to sell your wares. This is all about IAM Robotics today. That's it. We're not here to sell anything. We're here just to focus on them. And I also want to give a big shout out to Huntington Bank for their continued support of our work and the innovations that we take at the Tech Council to try to make sure that we're relevant and we're adding value to make sure that Southwestern Pennsylvania is an amazing place for people to build their business and to attract talent. So today, and Jonathan Kirsten's here with us. He's Vice President of all things media and marketing, and he will keep his eye on the chat and jump in as is essential. So what I'm going to jump in right now and say, welcome Tom Galluzo, CEO of IAM Robotics. You have quite a background and you are really doing some pretty fabulous work right here in our backyard. So Tom,
thanks, Audrey.
Welcome. And how about we just start like a little bit about Tom, because you really do have, a fabulous background. And I think people need to understand a little bit about that as we set the stage for the rest of the conversation.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, sure. Happy to talk about it. Just a little bit about where I come from. Originally, I'm from Buffalo, New York. My parents still live there. I went to school for college for aerospace engineering, school down in Daytona Beach called Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University.
Right.
So originally, I wanted to be a rocket scientist, I guess you could say. But I did some internships at Boeing and so forth, and the projects were so huge. They didn't really excite me because you got to work on just a small piece. And then when I was in college, I kind of fell in love with building robots as part of a club team. And we got to do some really cool competitions where we built robots to go through obstacle courses and things like that. And I just fell in love with the challenge, the complexity, the engineering. And so I went to grad school for robotics and went to University of Florida. Then after Florida, I worked at Harris Corporation, and then I got a job. I met some folks up at Carnegie Mellon at the National Robotics Engineering Center, NREC. And so I applied for a job up at NREC and was fortunate enough to get offered a position and worked there as a robotics engineer for a number of years before founding IAM Robotics. So got to work with the best, learn from the best here in Pittsburgh, and it's been great.
And so you had a chance to work on the DARPA Grand Challenge, right?
Yes, I did. So when I was in grad school, that was 2000, I was there between 2002 and 2006. And that was, the DARPA Grand Challenge was in 2004 and 2005. And so I was on the University of Florida team. It was excruciatingly difficult as a small team. I think our budget was less than $100,000 to build, one of the world's most advanced robots. And we were competing against CMU at the time, which probably had maybe $1 million in funding. I don't know, something crazy. And they had multiple cars, and it was super hard, but a lot of fun. And I think DARPA, in that 2-year period, they pushed a whole generation of people to a whole new level when it comes to building robots and autonomous vehicles. And that's why we have the driverless car industry today. So, and we know what that's done for Pittsburgh and the region, and it's been phenomenal.
Right. And the space piece is really interesting too. I mean, if you look at what is considered some of the most undervalued and underappreciated areas of innovation, space technology is ranks there like in number 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think I was surprised by how much innovation there has been in space in the past 20 years. I got out of aerospace because I thought we weren't going to see, a lot in my
Right.
lifetime, but it's really taken off. And, a good example of that is Astrobotic,
Hmm.
and those guys are just killing it right now.
Right.
I'm super happy for them because,
Same.
they've had a really long journey, and, to see them achieve the level of success that they have now is just what everyone wants to see.
Yeah, that's very well put. That's very well put. But, you know, your space though, in terms of what you're working on, let's sort of now talk about IAM Robotics, the problem that you're trying to solve, why it was formed, and what problems that you think that you're solving.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background. So when I was at Carnegie Mellon, I was working on a project, another DARPA project for building an autonomous robotic manipulation system. So these are basically, the project was called RMS, Autonomous Robotic Manipulation Software. So basically, what does that mean? It means getting robots that have arms and hands to look around and do things by themselves. So pick up objects and move them around completely by themselves. And we got really confident in our ability to get a robot to just see a single object, grab it, and move it. And so we started looking for, well, where's the killer app in industry? Where are the low-hanging fruit applications? And so we found, warehouse picking was becoming a greater and greater challenge for folks to staff in the e-commerce world. So when you order something online, there's like a 90% chance or a 99% chance that someone is walking somewhere or physically picking up the object that you ordered and putting it in a container for before it goes to the shipping or packing area. So we started looking at how could we have robots provide that function? How can you have robots drive around a warehouse and find objects and pick them up and move them around? And so it took a while. We built a prototype. We got some funding from Innovation Works in town. That was really, really helpful. So the guys like Rich Lunak, Frank Demler, just super, super important piece of the puzzle for us. Chuck Brandt is so that was really. And after we built our prototype, we were able to, kind of push our first product into the market with our first customer, Rochester Drug, and we had the robot picking products overnight in a warehouse there. And I think we're the first company in the world to actually get a robot to drive around a warehouse and find objects and pick them up and move them around. It was super, super challenging.
So you've had outside investment though. I mean, it's just, you've also had additional investment from outside the region, right?
We have. So I raised in our seed, we got seed funding along the way, where we raised about $3 million. And I had to kind of claw my way to, $50,000 check here, $100,000 check there. And we, at some point in time, we started getting some folks from Silicon Valley. So we got like $500,000 in seed funding from the Valley, from a company called Fusion Fund, and they're still very active in Pittsburgh because they were pretty successful in our investment. So they're still looking. And then we started taking robots to trade shows, and we met our current investors, KCK, and so they wanted to really amp up the company, and so they invested over $20 million so far into IAM Robotics. And so we have a new products coming online, and we have a new headquarters in Lawrenceville. We've kind of come full circle because we're right behind NREC now. We're literally right next door to Carnegie Robotics and NREC and RE Squared and all these good companies down here. That's
great. So what about now in terms of your product and customers? Can you talk about any of that? Like, who are your customers or?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a big contract that I can talk about publicly right now, which is a contract with a company called A.S. Watson, and they are basically the CVS Walgreens style retailer in Europe and Asia. So the biggest player in Europe and Asia for that kind of corner drugstore market is A.S. Watson. And so they're deploying a dozen of our robots into a brand new distribution center that they have in the Netherlands, where the robots are going to be picking 50% of the products that this company fulfills online.
Oh.
So yeah, so they've carved out a huge chunk of their operation and handed that over to our robots to find all the items and pick them off the shelf.
Wow, that's great. That's really exciting. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And I want to ask you, I want to just get a little personal and talk about like your background in terms of engineering, in terms of building, and now you're an entrepreneur, right? Now you're doing like a ton of different things, right? You're running the company, you're out there, as you described, pitching, and that's a thankless process in terms of raising capital. It does nothing for your self-confidence and your self-esteem, right?
Amen. Yeah, it's tough when you're in college and academia and school, and you get good grades, and you're used to getting 90% and 95% tests, and you go from 95% success rate to a 95% rate with everything you do, and when you're raising funding, it's just typical, and it's a total just mind shift in how you have to approach it.
I know, but how have you been doing with that? How so for other people who are listening that are entrepreneurs, they have ideas, they're running companies, it is lonely, and it's a huge amount of change. So how are you adapting? What are some secrets that you have that maybe you could share?
The first thing I think that's important to realize that was a mental shift for me was founding the company and just taking the leap. So I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur and found something and do something big.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so common in life, with any big life decision, buying your first home, getting married, having kids, starting a business, really big things that most people get into a mode of, oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not comfortable yet. I'm not ready. And I have this philosophy that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. You're going to be a year older every year for the rest of life, no matter what. It's never going to slow down. Things are never going to be perfect. The conditions are never going to be 100% favorable. Right. There's always going to be some odds of failure or loss or something. And you have that with any big decision. So if you're in a capability where you can find any way to get to that next step or to take that leap, you should do it, because life will not wait for you to be ready.
So how did you mentally adjust to going from being the top tier performer and student to being rejected over again? And I don't mean rejected, in terms of negative. It's just a matter of, the constantness.
Stubbornness. Just pure.
So you're just hard-headed. That's great.
Yeah, just a sheer willpower, and you just have to keep going. And the phrase that comes to mind is, if you ever seen Finding Nemo, and Finding Dory, and Dory just says, "Just keep swimming, keep swimming." That's, I walk around the office and I just think, just keep swimming. Yeah.
So as you're swimming, you get focused on what? You get focused on, and then there's COVID.
Yeah.
So how did that affect you?
So COVID's been interesting. It was building up right as we were getting ready for our big trade show for the year in 2020, which a trade show called MODEX in Atlanta. And we go every year, and every year we put on a big show. We have the robots do all these amazing things and demo what they're capable. And it took thousands of man hours of work to put together our demo for MODEX this past year. And, the weekend we needed to make a decision, we waited right up to the last moment. And we had the booth set up in Atlanta and everything, and we were restricting how many people could go down. And then COVID hit, and all of the regulations, came out, and advisory things came out and everyone went into quarantine. And we had to make this really tough decision that we had the whole booth set up at the show and we weren't going to send anyone. It was a really, really hard, stressful weekend, you know, because I was on the phone constantly with my team and I had people in Atlanta and I was talking with our investors and, you know, hey, you know, what should we do and what should, you know, and so it was a tough call and the show was not canceled. So some people stayed and kept going.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, we heard it was like a ghost town afterwards. So we're kind of glad that we probably wouldn't have got much out of it if we had.
Right. So just before we go to the, keep going. I was going to ask you something before we went to the questions.
No, go ahead.
About where are things made? Where are your products made?
Yeah, basically they're assembled in Pittsburgh. Here in our offices, we have a small manufacturing shop, and we do final assembly. But the parts are made all over the world and the country. Most of our fabricated parts come from vendors around the country. So, machine shops and cast injection mold, that kind of stuff comes from a variety of folks and vendors. And we have really strong supply chain people that are able to manage all that and figure out how to get it all here at the right time.
Okay. Well, I just want you to know, yesterday we had on Ira Moskowitz from the Arm Institute based in Pittsburgh. And I actually, and along with Jonathan Kirsting, we are going to become robotics technicians.
We are.
We will be getting you information about our skill set pretty soon. I'm sure that you need our skill set, and we want that as a backup plan.
Yeah, it's a great career path, and it's absolutely going to be a thing in the future. Everyone should be educated on how to build and run robots. Without question.
Yeah, we're not kidding. So that's
they have a great training programs going on with ARM, and done some phenomenal work with the folks at CMU and NRAC that they've been doing training for years, and really talented people putting those programs together. And I think it's super helpful for
I think
for
it's great. Right.
Yes.
So Jonathan's told me there's some good questions out there. So if we could, Tom, we're gonna let Jonathan ask some of the questions. Okay.
Tom, great to see you, man. Thanks for being part of the show today, without a doubt. I'm glad you we got some great questions here from the crowd as always. So, but I know first off, is I am part of the ARM community, and if so, and how are you getting benefit from that?
Yeah, really glad you asked that question. We just won our first project with ARM in conjunction with CMU and Johnson & Johnson. So that's ARM has published that, I think, on their website. We're working with J&J to advance our Swift piece picking robots to the next level, where they're going to be working, you know, on a tough problem that Johnson & Johnson has, to be able to pick products out of cardboard boxes and so forth. And CMU is going to be working with us to develop some of the vision and the perception software, the AI, if you will, that's going to go into the machine. So we're working with Professor Howie Chosit there and his group.
Oh, love Howie.
Howie, big guy. Howie's been an advisor for a long time, good friend.
That's great.
Worked with him for years, so I'm excited to be working with Howie on a project now for a big company.
Great.
And so ARM has been wonderful. And again, Chuck Brandt at ARM now, so he's back to fun IAM.
Great. He was from, what was it called, Jonathan? The organization?
Chuck Brandt was that the
Collaborative?
Tech Collaborative.
Tech Collaborative, right. Excellent. Jonathan, any other questions there?
Yeah, a couple more. Scott Dietz has another one here for you. He wants to know, what is the demand for and importance of talent with degrees other than robotics or engineering within the robotics industry?
In Pittsburgh, it's very important. We need a lot of functionalities in commercialization, sales and marketing, deployment, training, IT. There's 1,000 things. A robotics company is a complete, holistic engineering and systems company. So it's not just building technology, it's deploying technology, it's working with customers. Industrial engineering. Industrial engineering is probably one of the most important functions you can have in a robotics company, because our robots need to save people money, and that's what industrial engineers are focused on doing and figuring out how to do that. But marketing is huge, sales is huge for us, and really having strong relationship building skills is very important. So yeah, there's 1,000 things you can do for robotics companies.
So are you hiring right now?
Generally, yes. Yeah, we have still positions open in technology and software programming, but we're also hiring product manager. We're hiring an operations director to just help scale the company in terms of supply chain, manufacturing, facilities, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, we posted the link so everyone could see that. Let's just reel back a little bit. There's a lot of, you talk about picking, right? And picking, there's a lot of industries. So there's market sectors. Are you seeing any key industries that you think that you're finding like a niche in, or do you think that you're sort of across them? So, is it like healthcare and beauty and pharma, et cetera? Do you think that there's a niche, or are you just sort of taking this as a panoramic view and just doing what you can across all sectors?
Yeah, our picking robots are strongest in the health and beauty market. So your over-the-counter medicines and just health goods and beauty aids and shampoos and things like that. Generally speaking, those products have the right kind of size and shape for robots to recognize and pick up. But we're launching a new product where we're taking the mobile portion of our robot and working with some pretty big partners to just shuttle products around the facility in boxes and totes and things like that. So our robots are going to be just working on everything in that sense, and we're actually seeing applications in manufacturing where our robots can load parts into machines and take parts out of machines and be part of the manufacturing process in general.
So are you able to tell any markets that there's slowdowns? Like, or could you be like, a bellwether in terms of seeing any slowdowns or not?
No, I think the interest level has gone up in terms of strategic interest in robots.
Okay.
I think there's been a little bit of slowdown in just terms of capital allocation for this year, but I think as soon as the uncertainty kind of subsides and we, hopefully COVID starts to subside and hopefully these vaccines start to work, then I think we're going to see some real investments so people could be more robust and resilient for the next pandemic.
So I'm going to pass it to Jonathan, but I saw that Patty Rote gave a shout out for thanks for your support in Girls of Steel. So that's awesome. And Mark Emery has a good question, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Not all questions are great, but
yeah, Mark's is fantastic. I'm really curious to see how you respond to this, Tom. So Mark says he has a cognitively disabled 40-year-old son who has warehouse skills. He says, as robots become more common, how do you recommend that he and his management adapt his skills to adapt and become more productive in this job market?
Wonderful question. I think in general, the robots are going to be doing more of the physical work, or people are going to be doing more of the tasks that only people are good at. And so there's a lot of work on just commanding and controlling robots. So sending robots off to do tasks and helping robots that need assistance. So there's a couple of really interesting things that could be good for folks in that position. I think the future is bringing a world where robots are controlled remotely in special situations where they get stuck or confused. And so we're building all these help me out features into our robots where they send requests to people for help and assistance in making decisions. And so that world is going to be almost video game like, where people are going to be using apps to be able to guide and control robots. You can think of the CAPTCHAs that you see when you go to websites and it says, select 3 pictures that have stop signs in it, for instance. That's effectively the kind of thing that humans are good at that you're training robots to do by giving them some information. So I think folks in that position are going to benefit from skills of using computers and understanding, games and how to interact in those cycles and those control loops to be able to remotely guide and assist autonomous systems or semi-autonomous robots that need help.
So what would you suggest for him that maybe his son get trained the same way Jonathan and I are going to be trained in terms of being robotic technician? Wouldn't that be a good?
Absolutely. I mean, and the robotic technician is a broad term. Are you building robots or are you using robots? And there are two different categories of things. And I was talking more about the using robots, but there's tons of skills you could do in terms of building machines and wiring things and putting them together and that kind of stuff. But using robots, I think, is going to be where all of the new jobs get created.
Right. Okay, great. So you mentioned something about that you're back in Lawrenceville right now. So you've moved from, you used to have another space. What was it? In Sewickley.
Yeah,
so
we were in Sewickley.
Okay, so now people are in the office, they're all working, and now you're located back in Lawrenceville.
Correct.
And people are working. So what advice would you give? Because I know we're running out of time and people have questions, but I really want to hear from you in terms of what advice you would give to economic development leaders in this new world. There's a new world about helping companies like yourself. What should we be doing that we're not doing? And then the second part to that question is, what do you want? What would you like to ask of the tech community in terms of ways that we can better support you and your team? So it's twofold.
Wow. There's a lot to talk about there. So in terms of economic development, I think our economic development programs are still too slim in Pittsburgh for startups. And I think we need to be, someone's flagging me off. Is there a, okay.
Yes, he has a 12:30.
Oh, okay, someone's got a meeting in this room. I stole their room. Anyways, too bad for them. But no, the regional zones and so forth where you can get funding for opening up, it's too slim. I mean, it needs to be all of Pittsburgh going to roll out. And I think the tax incentives need to be there and so forth. And then in terms of the tech community, I think we need to be bringing in more. I know everyone has heard this 1,000 times, but we need to be bringing in more investors, and we need to be, having more that Pittsburgh money reinvested into the community in a variety of different ways.
Right, that's what we're working on for sure. So I know, is there any final comments that you want to make to us? And I know you're getting kicked out of your room. I thought you were the boss there. So.
Well, I don't even know what they're talking about, to be honest. I'm looking at my schedule and there's nothing on here, so bug off.
So we just got a window into Tom's leadership style, everyone.
Yeah. I mean, this is not me at my norm, I'll say right now, because this is an extraordinary circumstance.
Okay, so we talked about more money needed in the community. What about any of your downstream partners or upstream? Should we be looking at ways to attract them to Pittsburgh?
Customers are the number one thing on any startup's mind is how do I get customers? I get overwhelmed by too many suppliers and 1,001 folks that want to help me recruit people. And I can only take on, I think we only have 2 recruiter partners. I mean, I can't manage 15 of them, it doesn't make sense. But, anything that we can do to kind of tout up the Pittsburgh technology for, customers and the things that are available here for people to come see. And hosting groups, I think hosting larger groups of corporations to come through and, see what we do, that would be big. I mean, if you've ever seen the Plug and Play Tech Center in Silicon Valley, they do it better than anyone in the world that I've seen. Pittsburgh could really benefit from something like that here.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I think, Jonathan, that's all we have time for, right?
Good. Yeah, we got to wrap this thing up. He's got to get out of that.
Up and since Tom,
oh yeah, I have no idea. I'm dying to find out what this
Tom is getting out of his room. But if you want to know more about IAM Robotics, we've sent you the links. There's lots of things that people want to talk to you about. Thank you for being such a great citizen in the community and being, you know, just a part of the next generation of Pittsburgh. And thank you for all your guidance and advice today. I've taken notes and I think we have some things that we can follow up on. So IAM Robotics, I think, is a finalist at Tech 50. Jonathan, is that correct?
Oh, you're 100% correct. Cannot
Okay.
wait to find out the final results on November 12th.
I needed to plug that. They reminded me I needed to plug that. Tech 50 is coming up, I think, on November 12th. So want to thank everyone for being here. Who do we have that wraps up tomorrow?
It is cybersecurity at its finest. We have Michael Chrisman from he's the special agent of Pittsburgh FBI office. So good stuff. Yeah.
That's good, considering all that's happened since COVID and all the breaches and all. That would be great. So everyone, thank you to Tom Galluzo, the CEO and founder of IAM Robotics. And stay connected. I'm sure you can find ways to get connected to IAM as it makes sense. You heard from him. He can't be plowed by unnecessary kind of attempts, but he is looking for customers. So I think that's pretty important, right? Did I say that right?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, customers first. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you here tomorrow.
Thank you all.